na fe anote waba adwoa sewa yekobe se me anu miensa bia na wabone tofa wa kan kasa mu ede amayen His Excellency Shlomit Sufa Israeli ambassador ni chese Israel abana na musini owo Ghana ene ne no edi enkomo anope no. Good morning, His Excellency.
Medase pa opokwa.
Oh, okay. Ene na chese. Obeka twidi ene Martin. Oka Martin abeje say.
I'm afraid this is all I have.
This is all you have. That's okay. It's become Martin o si enia. When I say Martin, do you respond enia Martin?
Yenua.
Oh, wonderful. It's ono na mede no ebedi nkomo anopa ni nyina no se mede kan ama o background no ye de ekoso ewo Israel and Hamas entem ya dodo na ehunu ne se hadwene se ye kase enipa over 11,000 ena ahwere wo mo enkwa ewo Hamas nkwade wo mo ye 4,700 but ni nyina no ehase fi babi ena bedu babia ewo enne eti yenko na yeni enkomo. His Excellency, let's start. What's the current situation in Israel?
Well, good morning to you and to all our listeners. Thank you for asking this because the situation in Israel is not simple. It's quite difficult. We are still facing the consequences and the results of the October 7 massacre. We still have thousands of patients in hospitals. We still haven't come to bury all the people that were slaughtered viciously in the most cruel ways on October 7. We're still facing endless rockets from Hamas and the Gaza Strip, and we're talking about more than 10,000 rockets that were launched at Israel so far. So we have about 250,000 people displaced in Israel because of the threat, the ongoing threat from the Gaza Strip, and because of the threat from the north, which is due to Hezbollah rockets. We'll touch that later. And above all that, we have 238 hostages kept by Hamas somewhere in Gaza without any connection to the world, to their families, not even to the Red Cross. And we have they have been kept there for 46 days now. Children, elderly. We fear for the worst, and this situation is extremely difficult. So all in all, the situation in Israel is not simple at all. People are hurting. People are trying to understand and to overcome the atrocities that were committed on October 7 by Hamas terror organization.
Okay. You made mention the rockets are still being fired within Israel. Do you have any idea when it could cease?
I have no idea because Hamas has an arsenal of thousands and thousands of rockets. They continue launching at them, indiscriminately trying to hurt as many civilians as possible, firing them to the southern part of Israel, but also in the direction of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, where have you. And each and every such rocket that is fired indiscriminately towards civilians is a war crime.
Okay. And does Israel have any idea or plan to eliminate Hamas's capabilities?
Absolutely. We have tried everything possible with Hamas. Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007. Mm-hmm. Israel cleared all Israeli presence from Gaza Strip in 2005. We have decided unilaterally to take out every last Israeli person in the Gaza Strip, both military and civilians. Even we have unearthed the graves from the graveyards and took the dead with us. Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007, and since then we have been experiencing ongoing terror attacks against Israel and rockets that have been fired for the last almost 25 years since then, and 15 years, and we've been trying to make the livelihood of people in Gaza better. in order to promote better livelihood, better stability, offer people work permits in Israel. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people from Gaza were hospitalized in Israeli hospitals, and we were in the process of developing a program, a scheme, to enable the development on offshore gas field, that all the benefits, all the profits will benefit the Palestinians. But all this was destroyed on October 7. All this was meant nothing to Hamas, and the only thing that they want to do is to destroy Israel. This is their goal.
Okay. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres made mention that the attack on Israel didn't come out from a vacuum, because for over 56 years Palestinians have been subjected to suffocating occupation, which led to this. But it appears that Israel is now playing the victim. What do you say about that?
I would say, first of all, that the UN Secretary General, we need to understand that when he speaks, we should take that with a grain of salt and with a lot of criticism. For example, only yesterday he said, we are witnessing a killing of civilians that is unparalleled and unprecedented in any conflict since I've been Secretary General. But at the same time, if you look at the figures, you would see that 500,000 civilians were killed in the Syria conflict. In Yemen, 377,000 people killed. In Darfur, 300,000 people killed. In the Congo, over 860,000 people killed. So when the UN Secretary General speaks, we must take into account that he may not be accurate, and there is place for criticism. And Israel is facing an attack that is intended to destroy it. It's not about... We have to understand that Hamas is not about Palestinian liberty. It's not about creating a Palestinian state. Hamas is a branch of the international radical jihad movement, and their goal is to establish Muslim caliphate of radical Islam, the same way that ISIS wanted to do that. It's the same ideology, it's the same goal, and what we are fighting in Israel is a world threat. It's a threat to the entire world. It's a threat to every peace-loving nation, be it in Europe when you see the demonstrations that support Hamas and are promoted by Hamas. If you see it in North America, and also you see the threat in countries that are south of the Sahel. You see the threat of ISIS, of Boko Haram, of other groups that are affiliated. It's a common threat to all of us, be whether we are in Ghana or in Israel or in Norway.
Okay, so how many people so far, aside the 1,400 that were killed on October 7, how many people are dead in Israel as we speak? So far we have suffered in this war, we have suffered the loss of over 700 soldiers, and we hope that of the critically wounded people of October 7, that all of them will survive, but the injuries are critical and brutal, and we hope that there will be no more people that will die out of this in this conflict. But unfortunately, we need to see this through. We need to achieve the goal, and the goal is to eliminate Hamas military capabilities. We cannot continue to live under this threat, a threat to our existence, a threat to the people of Israel. We just cannot continue. We've tried everything else. Over 4,700 children have been killed in Hamas due to the attack on them by Israel, which is against the international laws, which you know. Do you think it is right?
First of all, I would like to say that we are at war with Hamas, not with the Palestinians, not with Islam. Our goal is the destruction of Hamas. Every civilian, every uninvolved, innocent life that has been destroyed is a tragedy. And this is not our intention and not our goal. We are doing everything possible to avoid harming civilians, and we have been directing them by leaflets and phone calls and messages to ask them and to instruct them to clear the war area and move down south. Unfortunately, the roads and the way to that war clear area in the south has been blocked by Hamas. Hamas is preventing people from moving down south because they need them as human shields, which is another war crime. They are using Hamas is using its own population as human shields, and if they are successful in moving to a place where it's safe, then Hamas is left without any human shield. But we are trying to do the utmost and more to avoid killing civilians, and it is, of course, unfortunate and a tragedy. It is not against international law. I must emphasize this. Israel is a law-abiding country, and we are obliged to international law. And there are laws of armed conflict that define what is allowed and what is not allowed in a conflict. And unfortunately, it does not prohibit harming civilians when they are caught in the war zone. Again, war is a horrible thing. You don't have nice, clean war. You have wars are very violent. It's a horrible thing. But sometimes there is no alternative. We've tried everything else with Hamas, and there's no alternative. We have to fight this war, and unfortunately, this war takes place in an urban territory that is heavily populated, and we have to move from house to house because the houses are booby-trapped, and there are rockets and the fighting of Hamas terrorists from these houses within civilians.
Okay.
And they are purposely placing their arsenal in facilities such as mosques and schools and hospitals. So we have to take the fight to the place where they are fighting from.
Okay, so how would you describe the happenings now? An escalation or a war against evil?
Yes, absolutely. This is a war against evil, an evil that is a threat to Israel and a threat, as I said, to the entire world, because this threat is not just about Israel. It is not about establishing a Palestinian state. It is about destroying a state. And that state is the state of Israel.
Okay.
And we are obliged, under the most basic law and obligation of every country to protect its citizens, we are obliged to protect our citizens.
One would say Israel is one of the countries with an advanced military technology. What went wrong that they never saw this attack coming on October 7?
This is an excellent question, and many people in Israel have been asking this question on October 7 and ever since that. We don't have all the answers yet. Some answers have been already emerging, but we do not have all the answers yet. There will be time for a very thorough investigation, but this is not the time yet. We are still in the middle of the war, and when the time comes after the war, we will have this investigation and we will have the answers, because people in Israel demand these answers from the leadership of the military and from political leadership, and they will have the answers. Israel is a very strong and resilient democracy that and the civil society is very strong, and in many ways similar to Ghana.
Okay.
So I assure you there will be answers, but we don't have them yet.
Okay. So what are the conditions that could make Israel ceasefire at this moment?
First and foremost, the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages. There are many hostages that are not even Israelis, because the terrorists, when they raided the southern part of Israel, they just took whoever they could find on the way. So they took Israelis, but they took Jews and Muslims and Christians. They took people that were obviously not Israelis, like people that came in from Asia or Africa to work in the fields.
Okay.
And they were all kidnapped and taken hostage. So we want immediate release. And we have to fight this war until we are certain that Hamas can no longer have military capabilities. Unfortunately, they were able to arm and accumulate great amounts of weapons and arsenal, but we are working hard to eliminate that and to eliminate once and for all this threat from Israel.
Okay. My impossible hana anochwaba adwasewa. His Excellency, you have to translate to a local language. So adwa take over na yemoboso kakra.
Nti nkomo na ye di no sabi e bekire ba ma wo mo a ya kan kasa no no mote ase no baby efrase nie abena busai say situation to say on grounds ene ma mi twemu say enya simple sa enough for me more than pa sanse obetimi aka say nipa empempem ena wo mo da yare sabia esanse arehosem esi October 7th no na wo mu nim say Hamas nso omo rocket be ye empimu duni akire ena omu gusu aya wo mo etoto omo toto saa se obetumi aka say wo ba ne mamu a nipa be ye empema hanu ne aduonum 250,000 ena wonya ba bia wodi wonti ebeto enipa ahanu ene aduasa nwotwe 238 ena sa enkrofo ya kyekyere wo mo de wo mo akwakosi a enkwada wom empanimfo wom emrewa wom sisise no wo mo ani abre pa ehwe se wonsa beka sa enkrofo no na eho na abra se ebusa se sese brebe ne yenhwe ni mu se sa woko kasie ya beda sa amamienu ni afoforo kra ho gibu yintem no ano ebebrase ene ma meche se sese do ka so betimi a kire bra no bebrase na se tuo betwa na oboa na emom still no ano wo bugusu nkakra abra busa se ne ma ba biem no mde bi gu akwan ma hwe ho ne se de ekoso ni nyina tu betwa no se Oma yoma famu die bina sanse every 2007 be yemfinsie dunum ni almost 15 years ena sansem yifrase na wo mu kurekura mu adada no ahwe animu se enkabedwo nanso enya de se edwo wo kiremu se sese nipa be empem oha over 100,000 ena wo mu free amahodo so anaso free Gaza aba be pie mu asese wo da yare sabia wo mu eje ayare hwe wo Israel man no emu na afi kura no wo mu animpefe so se sana eko na nso wo mo ye nhyehyeye na abrabu sa na no ada no UN Secretary General Kasai ana wo kire se asade no Israel for mo to pem ye na afese se aso masa akwa kwahye ba bi play victim ana ma me kire se da bi o na sa papa no kura wo Kasai ya ye nhwe ni ye sanse bi wa na nsem bu a wakeka no ono aka na afase bu abo no a ene sei wo se papa ne kaso ono asa kire mu se se kunkum na ekoso ho no broni use word say unprecedented na se bi nsida onim se dipa ba ya empema hasane aduosonson 377,000 eno mo ho aka adwamu e wa Yemen afa kura no obetumi akapa se nipa ba 860,000 so eye Congo ene sa nyema ntise ni nyina keka ni nyina abomu a na se nyema ekoso na no odem nti opanyi wa kan sem bia ya na wo mu enhwe ni ye o se Hamas na Hamas for no Hamas for no nyese wo mu epe Palestinian ye o da bi enyese wo mu pese wo mu je Palestinian man si ho da bi na mom eye jihad movement anase ye kuo bi a ene ISIS ye pe enyese se bi wo mu ye kuo bi a be ka se na muslimi fo ntino mo no mo ko da bi we ye muslimi kuo de nanso ye ka so mo ye radical na se omo ye omanfo bi esumbu omu tirim pa e no pese omo sorry ti anti se obi gina ba bi ka se ɔmpɛ sɛ ɔmo gye Palestinian man ni si wa nukuri bia nim na mmom ɔpɛ sɛ wɔkyekyere wɔn ko ho bom no ɔyɛ te sɛ ISIS ɛhyew ba wudie kuo no ɛno nti na ama sɛ ɔmo du mpɛmpɛnsuo yi a wɔnom aduru no ɛna abena sɛ abusa sɛ enipa 14,000 no ɛna ɔmo firi mu saa October 7th no sesei nipa dodo sɛ biem na afiri mu abɛka ho ɛna ɛma amekyerɛ sɛ asrafoɔ ɛbɛboro ahanson na sɛ over 700 soldiers ɛna sesei no baabi ɔmo da no mu ɔden paa emu yɛ den papa na nka ɔmo deɛ kɔ ɔmo hwɛ ne mu paa sɛ nka obi mfiri mu biem mɛka wɔn mu afiri mu no nanso pra na wɔn mu apra no sɛ de mu si ɛden no bɔ na ɔmo bɔ awurade mpa yɛ sɛ bibia ɛbɛtotɔ yie na ɛno na ɔsɛ ebusa sɛ wɔn mu hwɛ mu a hunu sɛ ɛkɔ bɛfa so obɛyi saa nkurɔfoɔ no afiri hɔ nanso wɔn mu sɛ no de broni bɛka sɛ threat sɛ nso ɔmo korɔ ɔmo nkwa da asan mu na ɔne ne man ɛne ne nkurɔfoɔ ntumi ntina de bi abra woda hɔ a na ayɛ ma hyew ɛha adwen wɔsɛ nkwadaa bɛboro mpem 9 ne ahanso over 4,700 ɛna ɔmo nam saa wɔ kun yi so yɛ a wɔn afiri mu na ɛno na ɛma amesi akyɛ sɛ ɛyɛ nokure trodoo na Hamasfoɔ no sese baabi ɔmo de ɔmo ani ahwɛ no ha adwen san sɛ kɔn mo bɔ ɔmo ɛhomɔden sɛ ɔmo bɛ send text messages to be ɔmo place phone calls ɔmo timi frɛ ɔmanfoɔ bɛ ɔbea yɛ ɔmo susu sɛ hɔnom na Hamasfoɔ no ɛtoto pa yɛ de waba sɛ me paatwɔ mo hɔ no mo mfiri hɔ sɛ sei ne yate nanso Hamasfoɔ no de saa nkurɔfoɔ no ayɛ shield aso ɔmo akyi no ɔmo gyina ɛna ɔmo didi sɛ awu no enti sɛ ɔmo Israelfoɔ no pia saa nkurɔfoɔ nyina kɔ baabi ɔmo ho banbɔ bɛkɔ yi a na sɛ Hamasfoɔ no ho ada hɔ nti Hamasfoɔ no so yi ɔmo afa mu deɛ sɛ ɔmo de saa nkurɔfoɔ no bɛyɛ human shield enti yɛtopem wo na woto apem ya ba bɛka civilians enti bra wɔ mo bɔ no ɛka ho bi nti na ne ne wobɛhwɛ ayaresabea na ɔmo ato hɔ sukuu dɛm na ɔmo ato hɔ bia ya hodo ɔmanfoɔ hyia som nyame anaasɛ muslimifoɔ dɛm na ɔmo ato hɔ enti ha adwen paa ɛna abena sɛ abusa sese wɔn kyerɛkyerɛm ɛdeɛ na ɛkɔ soɔ no wei no ɛyɛ ne bɔnefo sɛm ne awudie anaa ne ɛma amɛsɛ no kure trodo ɛyɛ awudie paa na Hamasfoɔ no ɛpɛ sɛ wɔn di Israel man no awu na asɛ ɔmo ma na yɛ sɛ ɔmo yɛ nkramofoɔ kuo yɛ ɔmo pɛ sɛ ɔmo gye som bi esi hɔ saa nsɛm no kure bia ɛni hɔ ɛna abena busi ɛma amɛsɛ na Israel man baako a ɛne ɛmɛmɛ kɔ SDA kura kakra ubɔ Israel na ɔmo agye so akofoɔ Israel na ɔmo agye so akofoɔ nti Israel man bi anka ɔmo abu ɔmo ho asie kɔmo wɔ akade ahodoɔ mbɛtumi di akontɔkɔ adi nkunim deɛ na asere wei deɛ asɛ afa ɔmo ase wɔn ehu hwɛ no wɔkyerɛ sɛ wei yɛ asɛm bi ɔmanfo dodoɔ na abusa nkurɔfoɔ busa paa na saa bro aka sɛ mprempro bɛtumi agyina ne nam no ɔma yɛhu muayɛ a na wodi ntro na mmom nneɛma ahodoɔ gu akɔmo yɛ nhwehwɛmu ahwɛdeɛ nti a ɛma ɛkɔba saa na berepam so ɔmo yɛ saa nhwehwɛmu ne nyinaa wie na ɔmo baabi afiri deɛ nti aso ɔmo yi ɔmo nia na ɛfa ɔmo ase abɛmpɛmpɛnsuo wei no a ɔmo de ne nyinaa mu nkyerɛmu ɛbɛba abɛtudwa na hɔnom na wɔsɛ busa sɛsei no yɛnhwɛ sɛ deɛ condition no esitie condition bɛɛ na sɛ Hamasfoɔ ndi gu akɔ bɛma Israelfoɔ ate ada na ɔmo agye ato mu na asomduaba ɛna wɔkyɛ sɛ ne nkurɔfoɔ a wɔakyekyere wɔn no san sɛ ɛko ni fraseɛ no Hamasfoɔ ti si ɛhyeɛ no so a ɛne wɔn akyekyere nipa bebree wɔsɛ nyɛ ɔmo nyinaa koraa na ebi kɔm yɛ Israelfoɔ wɔsɛ bi yɛ Jews ebi yɛ Israelfoɔ ampaniampa ebi yɛ Asians ɛna afei koraa ebi koraa no ɛyɛ abibrɛmufoɔ ebi yɛ nkramofoɔ ebi yɛ Kristofoɔ nti asɛ ɔmo ti si mu a ɔmo kyekyere obi ankwadaa ne mpanimfoɔ nyinaa ɛna ɔmo de wɔn kɔkɔ sie yɛ enti sɛ kɔba sɛ saa nkurɔfoɔ no betumi de ɔmo nipa ɔmo akye ɔmo ne nyinaa bɛba na ɔmatena ase anom asomdua bua no anka bɛkɔ na mmom sɛ Hamasfoɔ nyɛ wadwen so ɔbɛyɛ ne saa deɛ wɔn nso deɛ ne sɛ wɔn no de besia ne akɔpem sɛ Hamasfoɔ brɛ bɛso sɛ wɔn ni asra dɔm ahoɔden yes wɔn ni military capability bia mu a ɔde ɛbɛto ahyɛ wɔn so nti baabi atwetwe nkɔmɔ no akoduro no
adwoa meda se anɔte waba adwoa sɛwa na ate ne ka no nkɔ yogusoa ɛkan ho ɛwɔ ha menkɔ he excellency Shlomit Sufa Israeli ambassador wɔ Ghana ha sei na yentoa enkobo no so her excellency, has Hamas given any indication that they are not ready for any peace talk or they are not ready to be reasoned with? Have they given any indication?
Well, behind the scenes, there's ongoing contact or negotiations through other entities and other people, not Israelis. Israelis do not talk directly to Hamas.
Okay.
But there are negotiations about release of the hostages, or at least a certain number of hostages. So this is going on. It's a negotiation, so each side has their own conditions. You can never really tell whether it is about to happen, to take place or not, because all kinds of information is being released about this negotiation, so we don't know yet. It may happen today, tomorrow, or I don't know, in a week time. So there is this channel vis-a-vis Hamas, but otherwise, you cannot reach a peace agreement with this kind of ideology that is genocidal. It is genocidal ideology that is intended to destroy anything and everyone that is in its path that is not part of this radical Islam. There's no appeasing it. There's no place for any kind of peace talk with Hamas. Hamas is a threat and not an entity that you could reason with. There is a moral abyss between us and them, between terrorists that have the capability to I'm sorry for the graphic descriptions, but to terrorize, to burn people alive, to behead them, to mutilate them, to burn bodies and mutilate them to beyond recognition. We are still in a process of identifying bodies because the things that were done to them left them in a situation where there's not even a DNA left. These are horrors that people, experts, that say that they have experience with the horrors and terror attacks of ISIS in Iraq and Syria and other terror organizations in the Sahel and in Darfur. They say they have never encountered anything like this. This level of violence, of taking pride of this violence by taking video clips of the victims as they are killed and then placing it on social media or using the victims' mobile phones to send the messages to their relatives. So the last message that a mother or a father will get from the son or daughter is the image of them being raped and then killed, shot at point blank or worse. How can you reason with such an entity? How can you reason with such evil?
Okay, so news just in, I'm reading this from Al Jazeera. The Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh says the group has delivered its response on a potential truce deal to Qatari negotiators, while Israel has yet to confirm such a deal. An agreement is expected to include a captives prisoners exchange. Have you any idea about this, and will Israel agree to this?
Well, this is part of the negotiation. We know that Hamas is pushing very strongly to release of terrorists that are imprisoned in Israel. And, of course, they suffer a great loss of both human lives of terrorists and of their facilities and arsenals. So they are desperate to have some kind of ceasefire, or at least a temporary ceasefire, so they could regroup, rearm, and use the resources that they are actually stealing from their own people. Because Israel is enabling and facilitating humanitarian support to enter the Gaza Strip, and Hamas is taking control of these resources and using it for their own means and for their own uses and for the war. So, of course, Hamas is desperate to push for this kind of arrangement, and we have to take everything into consideration, because at the end of the day, we really need to release those hostages that are kept somewhere in a tunnel, dozens of meters beneath the ground, somewhere in Gaza, and their prisoners are of these terrorists. We don't know how they're treated. We don't know how there are children there, babies. One baby was even born during this captivity.
Okay.
So we fear the worst, and this is why we are working very hard to have this kind of deal to release as many hostages as possible. But we are aiming to release each and every one of them, and we will not rest until we will release each and every one of them.
Okay. From your explanation, you are alleging that Hamas wants to cease fire just to remobilize. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. They are not looking to end the war. They are not looking to reach some kind of peace with Israel. All they want is some kind of time off in order to reorganize and continue. And the fact is that they continue the fighting, and they continue launching those rockets every day on Israel, on Israeli territory, on Israeli civilians. And we see that they are not have any intention whatsoever to stop being the cruel, almost inhuman enemy to Israel.
Okay. Doesn't mean there's no trust.
There's absolutely no trust between a democratic state and an entity that is calling openly to the destruction of Israel and to the killing of every Jew everywhere in the world. And you see the impact. You see how much anti-Semitism is rising all over the world. Hundreds of percentage rise of anti-Semitic incidents, of attacks. Jews all over the world feel unsafe because Hamas and their radical Islam movement is pushing this forward. How can Israel feel safe if this entity, this evil, continues to be at our border?
So if there's no trust, meaning there's no way there could be peace, there's no way this could be resolved, where are we heading towards?
Not peace with Hamas. I must emphasize, Hamas, we look at it very differently, and this is not the case with Palestinian people, which we have a very clear policy that the resolution of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians will be achieved in a political way, and will strive to a two-state for two people solution. But this is a different issue altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Hamas is not part of this equation. Hamas is a different thing altogether.
Okay.
Because, again, they are not a political movement per se. They are not about liberating Palestine. They are about taking over. Eventually, they call out to the taking over every territory in the world. So this is not about establishing a Palestinian state that will live side by side in peace and security with Israel. Hamas is a different thing.
Okay. The leader of the Lebanese militant group, Hezbollah, has spoken, and to some extent it appears he's in support of Hamas. Do you foresee this fighting or this war escalating and involving other militant groups?
Unfortunately, we see that happening already. Ever since October 7, we saw growing and escalating attacks by Hamas or other entities, terror groups that work from southern Lebanon with the consent of Hamas, growing escalation against Israel when they're firing anti-tank missiles, and other means, drones and UAVs to attack Israel. And this is just growing and escalating. This is, of course, in clear violation of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 that does not prohibit any militant authority in southern Lebanon apart from the Lebanese army and UNIFIL. And we see them pushing towards escalation. Israel is retaliating in a very measured way because we do not want to see escalation. We see the entity that is pulling the strings in all the fronts that are surrounding Israel, be it the north, or be it the west with Gaza, or be it south, when we see that the Houthis in Yemen have declared war on Israel. and have already launched both cruise missiles and ballistic missiles towards Israel. Fortunately, all of them except for 2 were intercepted. One hit facilities in a building in Egypt, bordering southern Israel, and one hit a building in Eilat, our most southern city. But we see that the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas are all coordinated and orchestrated by Iran, and Iran is pushing towards the destruction of Israel many years, and now they believe that if they will come to a point where they can have Israel facing all these fronts together, this will be beyond our capabilities, but they're absolutely wrong.
Could what we are witnessing now grow out of proportion?
Sorry?
What we are witnessing now, the alliances, is it possible it might grow out of proportion?
Well, we have to take into account all possibilities, but we are trying, as Israel, we're trying to approach this threat in a very calculated, measured way in order not to lead to any escalation. We do not want that. We know that in case of escalation vis-a-vis Hezbollah, and if, God forbid, there will be war, there will be great suffering on the Israeli side, but much, much greater suffering on the Lebanese side. We do not want that. So we constantly signal Hezbollah to stop this escalation. And these signals, by the way, are also shared by and emphasized by Israel allies such as United States and France and other countries that also try to push Lebanon into stopping this escalation.
Do you have alliances in this war?
Absolutely.
Who are they?
We saw that so many countries have supported Israel because so many countries, ever since October 7, when they witnessed the horrors, they understand perfectly the threat to Israel, but also the threat to the West. So we don't count only, of course, first and foremost, United States, UK, France, Germany, and many other countries in Europe, Canada. But we see many countries also supporting Israel all over the world. We saw a very good statement by Ghana on October 8 of condemnation to these terror attacks. And countries all over the world understand the threat, understand the extent of the horrors that were inflicted on Israeli citizens, this attack that is unparalleled. You have to understand that for us, October 7 is like 9/11 for United States. It's a terror attack of unprecedented scale. The greatest number of Jewish people that was slaughtered in one day ever since the Holocaust. And we are a small nation. We're a small country and a small nation of about 9 million people. So under this scale, you have to understand that each and every person in Israel has been affected by this terror attack, whether they were living in the south or not. Each and every one of us has lost a member of family or a friend or a relative or the relative of a friend, one removed. But we all know people that have been affected or killed or fell victim to this attack. So this is something that is hurt Israel deeply, which is what Hamas intended, but we are resilient. We shall overcome.
All right. Her Excellency Shlomit Sufa ena yene no edin ko men kwa adwewa ho na de abobo so Sufa no o monitor fama ye ba na ye be wrap up. I'll be with you soon.
Enti me twaso free sa abena busa sa nye bia no Hamas fo no wo hwehwe ne yemamu a o ma ye krado se o mo begya mu amana kwa na anase o mo ewani swade hunu bi so pese bibia to din ana ene e ma me che se aha o de bi omo so omo no mu di nkita ho de no omo man ne ko no omo ne Hamas fo di nkita ho omo use adantem for between us wo omo na no omo di nkita ho ana ese no omo no maka se ebe ya anka wo mo achi omo akosie no kra no wonya bi ebuma wo mo anaso wonya omo nyina mu ma omo ansa na nkomatwetwe no aka no atwa so ba o se ne how ba akone se Hamas fo ne nye kuo bi a betimi akasa me no omo tena se anoma sumdue buada bi wo omo ye omo a omo nkramosom de yes nanso so omadwere na ehyew ewo omadwere mu a wo na omo tena se ka asem bokwa enye na eno ama omo hunu se Israel man se so omo nkwan eda asayem wo omo atete ahye de hutu nyina no wo omo nkwan eda asayem na de ba akokore ha ne se ekuo ya wo mutimi gina fa akuchi nipa ede se ka atu de minimu twa na hyew obi nso wo no mokro mutimi hwia de egu no so pagya tu ma ne hye amo makwase sa bodies bia die ne kura ntumi nkyere se nipa we ya o machine yakosu ya naso ya ama ne se sa ekuo we mu nipa nya nipa e no omo etina se di nkomo eyeye omanfo bi kura kasa da bi wohwemu a omusu no omo ban de kwa se ya chen de ISIS fo wo mo ye Iraq ene Syria no ye ha dwen pa na ade ba ko esa ha ne se wo mo edi sa wudi samie wo se they take pride in it na se eyo omo fe eyo omo hoho asan se omo timi de phone esi de omudi na wu no so obi kura timi ne da na omo record omo wi omo bonitu anaso omo de se kan asiri mi ne matwa ebu omo timi fa nipa ne phone se me anoto aba na ya che me ane afa me phone ne ahwe o ma me number to omo ye oyakayaka de ni nya ne record ne asende ama o ma me etu ma me bebie no ade nkrofo ye me be yansa na omo kunu ni chesa yem hihie pa na omo de tu nkrofo zisa nkrofo enya nkrofo a sebi mpraduasa ono omo tena se ka so ono omo dwene a ebeyeye na mu wa na abrase putuprumu a ne Algeria for de nsem bia tudwa kire se ye Hamas fo na je atum so ombe jani pani bi mo ba na no so mu nchemu tse no so weni nyina kan hyehye no a wo mo eye no 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 de woni mpefe se Hamas fo so mo hyehye wo mo enti wo matia da yes o ye jani pani so mo ja ma aka ne nso omo kwa akiri ho akoboabo omo ho ete se de sebi aponchi anase wo dwan ye pem wo kwa nachi ansa no de mirika bepem wo se sa pepepe no do hunu so omo ye ase ye nyama ne ke ja mo nkrofo amo mo ntimo nini mo ho so no obo so masa atu ni dima ya onto omo de omo je mu kura no omo da so te ho ye omo aya alert ye hwe ne masan se enkwada toto fifi wom wo se akoda bi kura de eyi Hamas fo e be kire omo kwa ne so ma amenyem afi no omo wo no bia ya wodi na sie no enti ha adwinti omo so mbeja omo ma omo ne ade a wonum hwe ni mu se wo mo nsa ebeka na abransa ma ni si so se ntu ampeni ampa so ogidi se Hamas fo omo ko omo achi no masa abepem wo se sese niama ne ajapade ahodo omo fom ni nyina no fe no mo kwatena se akohwem ahu ni so okay ye de weye ye de weye bi ye nti nyese sabi wo mo ja amana kakeke na mum omo bebo omo sanso mo hu se Hamas fo na hye wo mutirim nti omo kɔ no omo besa ba abepem wo mo na abras na se ne agidi ani mo na nipa mienu omo ti wona mo ka asem na so obi anyere yonku ni na maami hwehwe gidi ye de ne agi omo di ye kabi mami kabi man ye kan se democratic state enti yentimi ne nkrofo a ehye wo mutiri mo mutimi gina nipa mu eye nipa yakaya de twetwa nipa ma moja swani go from entna sese wo gidie wo mu da bi we ma Israel for wo mu ati ahye so nyina hu ne se yenkwa da asaye mu enti ya de yeguso aya bambo ne kwan befa so a ye no mbesi ani no ene ye hwe ani mu na abrabu san sese no gidie ni ho kwan be na asami wo mbeka omo kan sei sanse mumie na mo kan asem no gidie bia ni wono so enkomo ndi omuguso aye omudi omuguso edi nkomo na omo hwe se ombekọ no amanyo ekwan so na sa Hamas no different thing altogether eno anya amanyokuo no aka se political movement ena omo ayo mo sa so omo pese omo jefa ahodie ma Palestinian fo omo pese omo liberty Palestine but enya sa na tie kora omo botaye nyina ne se omo na mudie wudie konka kwa afi na wiase nyina be yo omo dia eno ne ade a wonom epese omo ehwe ena ja abena busa se na omo wo support de se bi omo sasie omo afododo no ade omuduro abeta Israel man wachi no so omanya bi omanya bi pa alliances de omo obi ena ohwe UK man no US man no France ene ama ahodo we Europe ene Canada dodo no ano ekura wo mu Ghana kra no October busu mini da na to so ngoche yenso release bi ade ba ekwa ma ade say we are in solidarity na say ye no mu nyina esubom na yafa mu die bia no ye be ne kakra na o se ne ha no say Hamas ya ye kan ye terror group enye kuo bi obetima kasa meje sum bia si wo da bi na UN Secretary Council resolution no wo mo hyehyɛ no wo mmra hodoɔ bi no kra no ene de nkrofo ye bɔ ebra pii nti ama wo mo anyamwa ene support pa afri baabi na san nkrofo adie ne sɛ omo beku nipa adi awu no wo pɛ sɛ omo twe Israel man na so ma Israel man ayam hyehye wo nti nkrofo bi na hyehye akire ena abena sɛ ena no ada kra ne so wurawura mu a okɔ ayi Lebanese fo no ho a opanyi ba kɔ wadi o masra Adom ko nanim no wɔn so abɛka so de ne mu duro taa Hamas fo de chi no so anya ne hwanwa ade na saase kakra bi te sɛ bɔɔla soja na onim sa asrafo Dom ko a ma hodo bi do mo ho wurawura mu na mo yɛ Hamas fo no yodiom na no kra no sa Lebanese fo no wo mo to miensa na miensa nyame ncha do mutimi kyire mu ba ko ya ani awu na mienu topa ye mienu na ka ho no edi awu pa wo mpotem ho nto munim sɛ asra Adom ko ahodo bi no ho no ma wo mo ne Hamas fo ni dinkita pɛ so mo bɛkeka ho na sɛ adwuma na Hamas yɛ no wo mo yɛ ne kakra kamu pa na wo se wo ba Israel man mu a wo do October 7 si ho no ma ɛte sɛ de okɔ US man mu a esi wɔ 9/11 no ɛsan sɛ nipa dodo mo ankasa kro mo dodo ni nyina kro mo hyɛda no so saa o mo yɛ 9 million pɛ na hwɛ nipa dodo a wo mu free mu saa da ne wo mu aprepre kyire ne wo mu agusu free mu a na wo so hu ne sɛ yawo no Hamas fo pɛ so mo de Israel man ne famu no saa na wo mu ɛkɔ no nanso mo de mo gusu wa ya omo ɛyɛ nneɛma atoto yi omo nim sɛ ɛsan so omu swanti anya bia obi hu aka obi busuani hu aka obi adamfo bi hu aka obi adamfo bi abusuani hu aka san sɛ omo yɛ kuro abusua baako enti omo de omo gusua edi nkomo ahwɛ sɛ asomdue bɛba nti hɔ ɛne yɛde aduru
Adwoa medase Her Excellency news just in from Johannesburg, South Africa. Israel has recalled its ambassador to South Africa back to Jerusalem for consultations ahead of a parliamentary vote in the African country to decide the fate of the Israeli embassy on Tuesday, which is today. So your colleague ambassador to South Africa has been recalled. Do you foresee this happening in Ghana?
No, absolutely not. I think that, first of all, I think it's a mistake when you have two countries that have very strong differences between them. This is the time for diplomacy. This is not the time. I mean, the South Africa has recalled its ambassador back from Israel, and we try to have our ambassador stay as long as possible in Pretoria, but unfortunately, this has escalated to a point where we had to call him back for consultations. But basically, we feel that the time when you have differences is the time for consultations, is the time for dialogue, is the time for engagement. Fortunately, here in Ghana, we are in a different place altogether. We have very good relations between our two countries, and they are established on so many shared values, on so much love and empathy and connection between our two countries and our two people. I don't see this happening in Ghana ever.
So do you think it is because the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is against Israel in this war?
Unfortunately, we see very, very hostile, strong statements by South Africa leadership against Israel and accusing Israel of all kinds of things that, of course, are not true. But yes, unfortunately, the atmosphere and the political notion in South Africa is very hostile to Israel. We hope that this will change, but it will take time.
Okay. So we are ending. Do you have any message to Israelis and Ghanaians?
Yes, I would like to address one more element of Hamas attacks on October 7 that we haven't touched that yet. But in light of the upcoming International Day of Combating Violence Against Women, which will take place on November 25th, this Saturday, and the UN calls for 16 days of activism after this day, until I believe December 7. I would like to address the issue of the horrific crimes that were committed systematically and intentionally against women and girls, Israeli women and girls, by these terrorists. They came prepared. They came with names of families. They have maps of the localities that they have invaded, and they came prepared for systematic rape and assault, specifically targeting women and children and girls as a part of ideology, as a part of an effort to inflict specific horror on these women and girls that were sometimes raped and then killed on the spot, not a minute after. And we know that they came prepared because we saw that on their notes. Mm-hmm. Some of them came with notes that say how to say in Hebrew, take off your pants. They came prepared and intentionally, systematically raped hundreds of women and girls as a horrific war crime against Israelis. I wanted to touch this because this is an element that is crucial to understand the level of brutality and cruelty.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Her Excellency. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Opokwa, and thank you to all our listeners.
Thank you. Her Excellency Shlomit Sufa, Israeli ambassador, Israel Baino, Anna Musinia, or Ghana, and the Neganino, Adinkomo. I'm not sure about Ebe Rapia, Pewa Honum, my dear, Yedi, Eviesiano, Ajoyanko.
Abena Busa se oko South Africa abetu adwa se opanyina wonu si omanam wo hono no South Africa man no afre no se won san emra ne nchina nkomotwetwe nkoso na one omoye adwe no ohun se bi besi wo Ghana na ene ya ma meche se Ghana de obaye no wo hu se ye wa adwe mu pa e wa akomamu fan na mpa man mienu ena enya asemba oman mu hakora no anamusifo aman ne mienu na amusifo ne mienu nyina kwanya de se obi anu obi mpo etwe manso nti we ye bra wo ye panyina wani da ho a waso ohunu kwan abefa so na waso asebna no nya sa abre ne waso ye niam bi sa ena abna na de obetumi akase South Africa mampanyi wone wo mo twia na no so wone de da honum fefe sansa na anu ada krata akro de ba ye ya wo bo Israel for so bo ekeka nsem bi Israel for nim ho hwe ne kire se opanyini South Africa mampanyi wo Israel man no asem to ka ho bi e no hyehya ase no aye tachira wo gem na maami be kɔ ne no wo kire se na sem etwa to ne se bosumi o mne de to so aduonu num na ese me mende ye be ye no eye da wo mo yi si hodo mo a wode ebo emma bamba ho dawuro na mo de na makomaku nsia si wo 16 days activism na anumu no ene wo ka se wode nsam ekwa ma Hamas fo ne se wo mo ba no omu wogidie se Hamas fo no omo bo omo they came prepared sans wo ba no omu kuta list of abusua din enti e no obetumi aba se asana no abo Hassan abusua mo wo he mo ma me ma ye wo ho no omo asese omo ne omo adato omo mo na adi wo mo awu enti omo bo omo no mba enti omo so ba behwe no omo tu omanfofo hu se sa adwen se wo baabi ukọ baabi akwosesa ma na o makoda kunkum ma yo ma yakayaka de ne etia ma efa hodie nti we ya de o mbehye mu kenapa na o ma hodo nyina hu se wo mu Israel man de eno ne yokon na wo mo kono unti bi mawuro bi mamu ukuta list ukuta abusua bi pese wo ye abusua na yakayaka de na de abegina wo se osum bi na wo bo ho ba na se wo bo ho dawuro de a na ese no no wo mu gitu mu a enyeye nti e maami asem a odi gya amanya hodo ene wo mu a enti asem ni nyina se ene yakayaka de wo mo ye ma wo ho no mo no eno mu nkyire mu yankasa yakankasa muni ajoa meda se anoche waba ajoa sewa na beka he Excellency Shlomit Sufa ho ayede enkomo ebre wo no ye ba sesi a time with the Minerals Commission ye de